From the beginning, Jesus was a source of peace. Even before he was born, his annunciation and conception and birth were harbingers of a peace long desired and pursued. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not going to try to even pretend to understand the isolation and doubt that Mary felt upon discovering that she was pregnant. And I can't say with any confidence that Mary did not feel threatened or violated like most women would feel in her situation. And I'm not saying that Jesus didn't cause conflict. Ask the Pharisees about that. Jesus would even say, I did not come to bring peace, but to bring the sword. Because Jesus knew that even his own ministry would be anything but peaceful. But Jesus, nonetheless, was the source of peace. A peace that vanquished fear, a peace not characterized by coercion or violence, a peace in which one's security and well-being and wholeness and personhood was guaranteed. Ask the people who were healed by him. But you see, we rarely talk about peace. Oh, I know. You've heard the political slogan, peace. You know what I mean by that, where our political leaders promote peace all the while they're getting the machinery of war ready. And we know that peace is a rhetorical flourish. After all, we say it, we even throw the sign, peace. But I'm talking about a peace that we often take for granted when we start thinking about God. I'm talking about a peace that I think Matthew's story about Jesus, Mary, and Joseph is trying to tell us about. And we miss so much about it if we do not pause to consider how horribly this situation of a pregnant girl and a confused future husband, by the way, could have turned out for another family, another woman who had not found favor with God, or who we don't know to have been called to bear the promised one. For anybody else, well, the outlook would not have been so peaceful. That confused future husband, Joseph, probably along with anybody else who may have learned about Mary's pregnancy, was preparing for a scandal. Let's not confuse it. A pregnant girl who had not yet been taken into the home of her future husband would have been suspected of all kinds of bad behavior. The religious community was equipped with rules and requirements that would have called for her to be disgraced. They would have called for her to be harshly punished. They would have called for her to be killed by stoning. The culture of honor and shame would have heightened this tension and tragedy of Mary and Joseph's situation, such that Mary, the most vulnerable here, the least likely person to have a say in her own life, would have been utterly destroyed. And I want you to go with me on this. As a righteous man, Joseph knew the rules. And when he found out that Mary was pregnant, he knew that he was entitled to bring Mary into a public trial to determine if she had been unfaithful or to determine if she had been raped. Whatever the situation is, the law was on his side. And with the permission of his religion and the permission of his culture, Joseph could have acted with violence and vengeance against her, with the culture predisposed to take his side of this whole thing against Mary. Joseph had the power to turn this whole effort into some way of salvaging his own reputation and his own honor. But Matthew tells us that Joseph already understood something. Joseph chose the way of peace. Oh, I don't think you know what I'm talking about. Everybody's talking about you. The woman you have been promised to is about to be yours, and you find out she's pregnant. The law is on your side. You can do whatever you want to do. You could have her killed if you want to. You could salvage your own reputation. But Joseph chose peace. Not a peace that's simply the absence of violence. No, despite the rules and regulation, Joseph seems to be motivated by peace. A peace that God desires. That no matter what happened, no matter what was going on in his mind, no matter what he thought could have happened, Joseph was concerned about Mary's well-being. He was concerned about her safety. He was concerned about justice. He was concerned about her wholeness. So the Bible tells us he decided to dismiss her quietly. We don't want everybody to know all that's going on. Joseph chooses the way of peace. Joseph chooses the way of sensitivity and empathy and sought to make sure that Mary would not be harmed. Joseph chose peace rather than vengeance, mercy rather than sacrifice. What would we have done? What would we have done? But God had an even bigger revelation of peace for Joseph and, by the way, for us. God reveals God's self and God's plan in Joseph's dream. An angel of God leads Joseph to faith. Here's this peace coming through. God speaks an assuring word of peace to Joseph. Do not be afraid. Why would they say don't be afraid? Because if you are afraid, you won't choose peace. Let me go a little further. If you are scared of something, you're already ready to fight. If you live in fear, you're going to beat it out of somebody. But the angel said, do not be afraid. Because if you're afraid, you won't be compassionate. If you are afraid, you won't be forgiven. How many scared people forgive people who scared them? Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to accept what God has allowed. Do not be afraid to be along with Mary, the vessel through which God will come into the world. The angel is witnessing. The angel is preaching to Joseph, and Joseph is hearing it. The angel is telling Joseph that Mary's child is not the product of shame or scandal. One commentator said, this is a holy disruption. God is cutting up. And when God cuts up, get on board. Mary's child is a gift of the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son. And Joseph, here's another thing. Call him Jesus. Wait, you don't understand what that means? Call him Yeshua. Yeshua means God saves. Don't call him Paul. Don't call him Matthew. Call him God saves. Call him Yeshua. And then the angel keeps witnessing. The angel is preaching. I just want to hear the angel preaching, tuning up and preaching. The angel then says, oh, but this is fulfillment, buddy. This is not scandal. This is not mess. This is not chaos. This is not frightening. No, this is God fulfilling God's prophecy. The promise of God with us. This is Emmanuel. Now, even if Joseph still was in doubt and isolation, an angel of God comes and says to you, your son is going to be God saves and God with us. Oh, I'm paying attention. This child is going to be God with us and God saves. Oh, God is up to something. God is revealing something to us. God is something is unfolding. The promise of God saves and God with us is being fulfilled. God is bringing peace into Joseph's life and into the world. So take Mary as your wife, Joseph. Become the father of this baby and be the instrument of God's peace. Oh, how many of our parents would have loved to hear an angel say that your child is going to be God with us and God saves. You better pay attention. No mess, no scandal, no anger, no chaos. This is not Maury Povich and Jerry Springer. This is not a paternity test to see who's who. No, this is God with us and God saving. So now, don't worry about the rules, Joseph. Don't worry about don't worry about what you are entitled to by custom or by law. Embrace this woman and this child, the sign of peace in the world. Peace. No mess, no chaos, no anger, no assertion of rights to be mad, no coercion, no kicking her to the curb, no imagining what she did and who with. Embrace. Choose peace. The reason I'm talking about peace today is because during Advent and Christmas, I think the least thing we talk about is peace. It is a political rhetoric. It's a political rhetorical flourish. We just throw it off. Peace, peace. But what does peace look like? Do we choose the way of peace? And I have to ask it because it seems to me that it has been church folks who've been more neglectful of peace than anybody else. Oh, I'm about to get in trouble now. How do I know? How do I know? Because it is church folks who are miring themselves in chaos and scandal and mess because you said happy holidays rather than Merry Christmas. That's mess and chaos. That's not choosing the way of peace. It's not choosing the way of peace. I'm saying it because it is church folk who don't want LGBTQ family members to come home for the holidays or kicking them out. That ain't peace. That's chaos and mess and anger. We give short shrift to peace because it is us, the religious folk, who sow discord. Because the rules and requirements tell me that I am entitled to call you a sinner or to damn you to hell because God gave it to me and I'm the chosen one. That's scandal. That's chaos. That's mess. That's not God. The message to Joseph is the message we would do well to hear and receive as Christmas dawns. Do not be afraid, because if we are afraid, we will not show compassion. If we fear our neighbor, we will not be neighborly. If we fear what God is doing in and through all of the vessels of God's creation, then we will not love one another. If you think that because I am gay or because I am Muslim that God can't love me, you have already chosen the way of violence. In the life, ministry, and faith of Jesus Christ, we are encountering God with us. And see, we kind of stop it right there. We are encountering God with us, but we're also encountering God saves. God with us and God saves. And notice, that sentence stops right there. God with us, God saved. Not God with these people over here and not you. Not God saves her and him, but not you. It's absolute. God with us and God saves. So the message, if we do believe that God is with us and that God saved, then where is the peace? Where is the peace? Again, everyone who encountered Jesus knew peace. They knew wholeness. They knew well-being. They experienced that acceptance, that unconditional love, that embrace that had nothing to do with where they've been, who they were with, or how long they did it, how bad they did it, and how ugly they've been the whole time. It didn't matter. That's why when Jesus came into their midst, the first thing they could think about was the prophet Isaiah. The prophet Isaiah talked about this Prince of Peace. And so when they met Jesus, they kept thinking, this must be the Prince of Peace that they've been talking about. This must be the one. It's who we claim. When we feel so embraced and loved, oh, that's the peace. Not simply the absence of violence, but the guarantee of wholeness and acceptance, of well-being, of a general welfare, of God taking care of us, of justice, of righteousness, all the things that we desire, even when we don't think it's possible, we desire it. And Jesus embodies it. So what would it mean for us to embrace the peace of Jesus? What would it mean for us to embrace the very name, God with us? God with us. How would we act differently when we sit next to someone that we just don't like and say, wait a minute, God with us? Oh. What if we really took seriously God with us and God saved? How can we not live in peace? How can we not live peaceably with another? Oh, I tell you, it's just like me in church when I was about 5 or 6 years old. I used to run my mouth incessantly in church. And all my dad had to do was look at me. And I would straighten up. Maybe that's what the notion of God with us should be for us. That as soon as we are being horrible and mean and unforgiving and violent, that we get the notion that God is right there. Maybe we'll just straighten up. Just stop right there. And so the next time when that instinct to fear is overwhelming, that instinct to reject and to violate and to hate is there, that maybe just that emotion will come, God is with us. That God is with us. That if we remember that God is also incarnate in that baby, but God was also in that dream of Joseph, that God was there in that mother Mary, that maybe just like all of that family, that entire family, that God is right there present in us. Right there present in the person that you just can't stand. Right there in the person you just so different from you that you don't want to understand. This can transform our very celebration of Christmas. That if we take seriously that God is with us and that God saves, then maybe when we say peace on earth and goodwill to all people, we will actually